It's not too often that I come across a piece of software that blows me away. Today, that's Netdata, a hardware and resource monitoring system for all deployment sizes, for regular home lab use to multi-site organizations with thousands of metrics. The amount of information you can pull out of your setup and display in here is honestly crazy, and it's pretty easy to get started. However, nothing is perfect, including Netdata, so we'll talk about the shortcomings as well. What we're going to do is take a look at what Netdata is, how I'm using it, and my thoughts on how to improve it moving forward. Let's jump in. First, let's start with what Netdata is and what it isn't. Netdata is a distributed real-time health monitoring platform for systems, hardware, containers, and applications collecting metrics. I literally just read that from their webpage. For Ooga Booga cavemen like myself, this means that it's an all-in-one software that lets you monitor your systems. What it's not is a proprietary software that requires third-party licensing to use and is mostly open source. I'll get to that in a bit. Now, the big question everyone has, especially in the home lab world, is how much does it cost and can I self-host it? Well, you'll be thrilled to hear that Netdata is free. Kind of. And you'll definitely be able to self-host it. Kind of. So the big thing about Netdata is that at the heart of it is the Netdata agent that you install on any system you want to monitor. This spins up a database, web UI, resource collector, and exporter all from that single install. This is 100% free and you can throw it on as many machines as you'd like. The issue comes up when you try to organize all these things together. There is technically a way to do all of this, but if you want a super cohesive experience, you'll have to pay for the cloud piece. Now hold up. I know I just triggered a bunch of you out there by mentioning paid and cloud in the same sentence. I fully understand that home labbing is built on the back of self-hosting open source software, which we pride on being free to use, but sometimes if you want great software and you want to see it grow, you'll have to put your money where your mouth is. Which is why I'm paying for Netdata. Yes, I'm paying for this with actual money. Netdata didn't send me over any keys. They don't know I'm doing this video. I'm not affiliated with them in any way. But I still have to get paid. This video is sponsored by Ugreen and their Uno line of chargers. Honestly, the cutest chargers I've ever used. The Ugreen Uno charger 100 watt has 3 USB-C ports and a single USB Type-A port, with one of the USB-C ports being able to charge an iPhone 15 Pro from 0 to 60% in 30 minutes. And most importantly, look at that face. It's like having a charger and a friend all wrapped in one. I mean, look at this. This single device charges everything I need. Another cool device is their magnetic wireless charger that charges my phone and AirPods, you guessed it, wirelessly. If you need fast and fun accessories for the new iPhone and other Apple devices, and also a friend, then check out Ugreen's line of Uno chargers using the link down in the description below. I often dislike relying on the cloud for most things, but with this, it just makes it so easy to manage every piece of hardware you have, no matter where in the world it's located. Plus, I just want to support the project. All right, we got that out of the way. You went down and said some mean things about me in the comments. Good, let's move on. Because when I show you my setup, I'll also show you what to do if you don't want to use the cloud and want to do everything for free. Now you can go ahead and try out the cloud option for free, but you are limited to just 5 devices, which may be enough for you. And like I mentioned, the self-hosted open source agent, which does almost everything locally, is free. I've opted for the home lab tier, which gives me unlimited devices for $90 a year, assuming I'm not turning around and using it for some commercial purposes. So how about we just dive in and take a look at what I'm running and show you the basics. All right, here it is. Here is Netdata. This is the default homepage. And before we dive into all this, let me just say, this isn't going to be a tutorial. This isn't going to be a deep dive into Netdata because I'm not an expert and I don't want to create a 20-part series because honestly, there's that much here to dive into. So think of this as kind of a walkthrough / tutorial light. So here we are in the home page. You do have a couple of default tabs up here, but this is your main one. It kind of gives you an overview on your entire setup. You can see I have 8 nodes, and over here you can group them by however you like. None just shows you all of them. You can hover over and it gives you the host name and a bit of information about them. You can do it by operating system, which is pretty cool. Over here, a bit more information. Down here, some more info. Some alerts, we'll get to those in a bit. Actually super useful, actually saved my butt recently. And then some information over here about how many metrics it collected. So let me make one thing clear before I forget, is that when you're using the cloud, you're not sending all of your data to the cloud. It's all stored locally on the machine that you install the agent on. And then when you pull up the cloud interface, it's pulling from there. So you're not sending your data to the cloud. It's not storing it in the cloud. It's all stored locally. So yeah, moving over into probably my favorite default tab is the nodes. And this gives you just a bunch of information about every node you have this set up on. So scrolling down, you'll see everything, and I'm not going to cover every last node, but I do have my Proxmox cluster in here. I have Alvin, Simon, and Theodore. Surely you know what that's a reference to. Here's my Zima blade. I'll talk about that in a bit, why this one's important. My main PC, you'll see nothing is here, even though that's my main PC right here, and you can see it's on, but again, I'll get there. Here's my Plex virtual machine, as well as my Docker virtual machine. And Synology. You can even install this on a Synology system. So pretty cool. Each of these has default metrics like the CPU usage, the average load, I think, over the last 15 minutes. I don't know. Memory available, disk read, disk write, network in, network out. Again, just super useful, basic information. I didn't have to set any of this up. Anytime you add a node, it gets thrown over here, and you can even filter over here. If you don't want to see all of them, you can go over here to filter, and you can say, I just want to see my cluster ones. So I can select those, and boom. A cool little dashboard to easily monitor my cluster. Again, I didn't have to do anything. Metrics, this goes into more detail. So this is your entire system put into one. And again, you can filter, but here you can see average RAM used per node is 22, average CPU per node 1%. You can see I'm not doing much in my home lab. That's no secret. And again, you can filter down, you can scroll down for a bunch more default graphs and stuff. Again, all of these are default. It's crazy how much there is. I'm still scrolling. And similar to this, if we go back to the home page, you can click on an individual node and then go over here and click this guy. And again, you're seeing the metrics page just for that individual node. I mean, this is crazy. I've always wanted an easy to use monitoring system that had this much granularity. Granularity. Yeehaw. And this is it. I mean, again, nothing I've showed you is anything I've had to do. I just installed the nodes. Moving over, we have our top, which runs the processes, and you can see what the processes are running on each node. Just so much useful stuff by default on here. Then we have logs. You can check the logs on your system. I mean, again, crazy. K8s, I haven't gotten to installing this on my Kubernetes system yet. That's probably going to be down the line when I do a more long-term review of Netdata. But for now, I don't have it installed. And then dashboards, you can see I have 2 of those here. And before I get to that, let me just show you how to actually add a node. It's really easy if you're using the cloud provider. So you can go into node and click add node over here. You can do it from the home page by clicking this button. And when you do that, it'll give you this little pop-up to tell you how to install it on a Linux system, Windows, Docker, Kubernetes, Mac OS, or FreeBSD. Like I mentioned, you can also do it on Synology. That's on their website. You can install it on a bunch of different things, but these are the main ones. And they're all pretty much one-line installs, except for Windows. We'll talk about that. So you can see on Linux, it's quite literally this. It's one command. That's literally it. It runs the install script that it pulls from their repo and then uses a claim token to hook into your cloud instance. And I'm blurring mine out right now because I don't want you perverts sending your data to my cloud instance. And once you do that, it just pops up over here. And that's literally it. It gets ingested and put into all of these default interfaces, and you can monitor it however you like. Now, when we go over here to dashboards, I mentioned that I have 2, and these are for obviously creating custom dashboards. So if we go into one that I created called cluster, you can see that these are my cluster nodes. And what I've done is I've added custom graphs for each of these nodes, as well as an overall one. So you can see it's nothing too crazy. Again, I'm not a Netdata expert. I haven't gone into create anything super fancy yet, but I mean, it's really easy to create some basic useful stuff here. So you can see I have an overall CPU use, that's so hard to say. Overall, I have a CPU usage graph as well as overall RAM usage. And then under that, it's broken down by each of the individual nodes, and I have their network activity over here. Now, I will say what they can really improve on is actually moving these around and creating the graphs. So for example, if I wanted to add a chart, I click this, then it's going to ask me which nodes I want to do this on. So if I want to do it on a specific one, I can select that here. But if I leave it all nodes, you can see I can filter it later. And then what you'll do is you'll select the information you want to pull. And there is a ton here. You can go into the docs and find out, more information about specific nodes you install it on. It's pretty cool. If you install it on Proxmox, it'll automatically pull in some Proxmox specific stuff. If you install it on Windows, it'll do Windows specific stuff. So you have to go in and see which attribute or data you're looking for. So for the most part, you'll use system for Linux systems. And we can do maybe active processes. And when you click that, it'll give you a preview of what the graph's going to look like. Then from there, you can kind of drill down and see how it says 7 nodes. Well, maybe I just want to see my cluster ones. So I can select those here. Easy peasy. And just like that, I'm only looking at my cluster ones. Then if there's any other dimensions it pulls in, you can filter those out here. But yeah, I'll go ahead and add this chart and you'll see it just throws it on there. And again, it's not very intuitive. You can't really like drag it like you would a regular window. You have to come over here and drag it. And then if you move it, it kind of moves things around automatically. You can resize it, but there's no like snapping. It kind of just moves things by default. It's not the best. And you also can't copy a chart. So when I had 3 of these, I would have loved to be able to just kind of highlight all of these, copy paste. Can't do that. That would be nice. Another thing is that you can't change the color of these graphs, which is kind of annoying. I would have liked to have it broken out by color. But again, you can't do that. So room for improvement. All right, let's remove this. Oh, another thing that's kind of annoying is that you can see on these RAM charts, it kind of gets cut off. So the auto sizing feature isn't working very well. Why it isn't, I don't know, but the text is kind of cut off over here. So it'd be nice if they'd fix that. Anyway, moving on to my other dashboard, and here is where I'll talk about some of the self-hosting stuff. So my other one is called Main PC, and if we open it up, you'll see that nothing is here. Even though my PC is turned on and it is definitely running. So let's talk about what's going on here and why this is how it is. So when you go to add a node, I know we're backtracking a bit here, but it'll make sense. When you go to add a new node, you'll see for Linux, it's pretty straightforward, right? We established it's a one-line command. Windows is not like that. There are quite a few steps you have to take. First one being install the Windows exporter. And what this is it's an MSI package you'll have to install. You can go into their GitHub, go down here to releases page, go down to a latest version or whatever one has the MSI package here, and go ahead and install that. And it just installs the exporter direct on your Windows machine. That easy, no real setup required. Now the next step we see is install the Netdata agent on Linux, FreeBSD, or Mac. And remember, that's pretty much a one-line setup, and it installs the entire agent on your system, which does have an importer, exporter, as well as a GUI. And we'll see why that makes sense. So what you're essentially doing is, since Windows can't connect to the cloud, you're exporting the data from that Windows machine to a Linux or Mac or FreeBSD agent. That one's gonna take in the information on that Windows system and then push that to the cloud. Why it does it like this, I don't know, something with Windows they don't like, but That's how you'd have to do it if you want to monitor a Windows system. And I mentioned my Zima Blade was important, and that's because the Zima Blade is the one hosting the agent, which is collecting my Windows metrics. So if we actually go to the UI that's running on the Blade, we can do that by just going to the IP address, and the port its default hosted on is 19,999. And you can see this looks pretty similar to the cloud one, but this is running entirely locally on that Linux system, my Zima Blade. And you can see over here, if we go to nodes, look at that. If we go down here, you can see my Windows machine that is set up as kind of a child node that this agent is reading it in from. Now, how did we get there? Well, we weren't done setting up this node. If we go back here, the third step is to configure the Netdata to collect data remotely from Windows. And you do that by setting the configuration file on that agent node. And again, super easy, a couple of steps. The first thing you have to do is modify the Windows configuration file, which is just a default file that's created when you install the agent on a Linux system. And it'll look something like this. By default, there won't be anything in there, but all you have to do is create these 3 lines, which basically give it a host name and point it to the IP address of your Windows system on this default port, and the URL it uses is metrics. So I can honestly just go to that because my Windows machine is on. Let me show you. Look at that. This is all the data that it's exporting, and this is what that Linux agent is reading in. So if you have authentication, you can add that here. I didn't. If you have HTTPS, you can skip the verification if you want. The next step is to make this a virtual node, or essentially a child node. And all you have to do is modify this etc netdata vnodes.configuration file. And again, a couple of lines, give it the host name that you created before. And if you have more, you can do more. You can add a bunch of them. And this is what I talked about with the self-hosting. You can spin up an agent on a Linux system and then use that as the parent and create a whole bunch of different nodes feeding up into that one. And again, all self-hosted, all free. And once we do that, we should see that node created here. And now, why isn't it pulling in data? Well, that's because it just stops if you turn the machine off and turn it back on. It doesn't seem to want to pick up where it left off, and you have to restart the service. So let's actually do that. So I use RDP on this because it's actually running some metrics outputted to a monitor I have up on my wall. Here's some B-roll of that. It's pretty cool. So I can RDP in since I don't want to get up there and use a wireless keyboard and all that shit. Okay, so I just recorded the whole part about RDPing in on the monitor that I wasn't recording. So let me kind of briefly do that again. So you can see, now you can see the Windows information is being read in. What I had to do was do a systemctl restart of Netdata. And that was it. It's kind of annoying, but that's what I had to do to get the Windows machine to start reading in again. Okay, yeah, another thing I want to talk about is alerting. So if you go back to, let's close all these. If we go back to home, you'll see some of these nodes have a yellow border around it. That means there's an alert for it. If we click on that, and it's my Synology system, let's see what it's yelling at me about. Go over here to alerts. It's saying system clock sync state. I don't really know what that means, but I do have a screenshot of when Netdata was letting me know that I had both ZFS issues and memory issues on one of my cluster nodes. This was super convenient because otherwise I didn't really know, but when I saw those notifications pop up, I knew that, hey, I had a failing disk on my ZFS pool in there, and I just went and replaced the disk, and now it's good. No alerts. So really cool, and you can have it emailed to you, but it's kind of confusing. I don't really like the way it does notifications. So you can go over into settings, I believe, and down into alerts and notifications. It seems like you can only turn on, like, if you want emails, but it doesn't seem like you can tell it which ones you specifically want it for, and I can't really edit it. You might be able to do this somewhere. I just didn't dive that deep into it. I just turned it off because I was getting emails that I probably should have just read. Now, I know this wasn't a deep dive into Netdata because Honestly, that would require an entire video series. There's just that much here. In the future, I plan to expand my Netdata deployment onto pretty much every device in my lab, as well as my K3S cluster. So maybe next year I'll have a more impressive setup to show you guys. But I'm hoping I got to show you a glimpse at a cool piece of software that has become a main part of my home lab. I know there's plenty of cool softwares out there, some that do similar stuff like this, and that's awesome, but I'm just one dude and this is what works for me, so that's what I'm sticking with for now. Let me know down in the comments what you're using to monitor your home lab with, or if it's Netdata, let me know what kind of cool things you're doing with it. If you like this video, then go ahead and drop a like and subscribe if you want to see more home lab shenanigans. I want to give a huge shout out to my YouTube members and my Patreons. You guys are my home lab monitoring solution that is super easy to use and gives me all kinds of juicy metrics. Y'all are the best. And if you're still watching, you're a pie chart. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.